Welcome to Collegial Conversations with Diana Clark, the professional webinar series that offers clinical and personal perspectives on issues that are common, but often not talked about. Here is today's Collegial Conversation.
Welcome to Collegial Conversations with Diana Clark. Today's episode is featuring Shara Turner, Clinical Director at Sabino Recovery. Shara's profound dedication to treating individuals through a trauma lens is influenced by her firsthand experience as a trauma survivor. Her immense knowledge and expertise stem from a combination of professional and personal encounters, propelling her to train, educate, and treat individuals with exceptional passion. Join us today for insights and valuable information from Shara's unique perspective. Thank you so much for joining us today, Shara. I'll pass the conversation to Diana.
Thank you, Laura. And Shara, welcome. I'm really happy to talk to you today and really pleased with the work you are doing to help people everywhere. So thank you for joining us and thank you for the work.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's talk about trauma and the lens you're looking through. Are we talking about what people define as big T trauma or small T trauma? Let's tease that out a little bit.
Well, something that I've learned over the years is trauma is really contextual to the individual. Something that severely dysregulates the nervous system and drives a narrative of unworthiness, unsafety. That can be many things, right? But however that impacts, because when our nervous system is chronically dysregulated, we're going to reach for anything in our environment to regulate that nervous system as quickly as we can. Because when we're in that trauma response, we don't have access to the discerning part of the brain, right? The executive functioning. And so I call them maladaptive coping mechanisms, but those become our survival because we are meant to bring homeostasis to the nervous system.
Right.
We have big T's all the time. I'm a survivor of abuse for 6 years of my life as a child. And that's a big T. But also I had a gentleman come through my door 2 years ago that just said, hey, I drink too much. My childhood was perfect, but come to find out he was horribly bullied in the 5th grade. So to some, my trauma may seem bigger, but his trauma had the exact same impact on his nervous system and the narrative in that lower part of the brainstem, that amygdala, right? So again, that's why I say it's just contextual to the individual and how it impacts them.
That makes sense. And your personal story fueling the work you do is brave. Can you tell us an inch more about your personal story?
Well, I was 6 years old when my mom married the narcissist down the street, right? Age-old story. And, I just spent a great deal of my childhood being abused in a lot of different ways. He was not a, good person, but also came from his own background of abuse. People don't just abuse. Hurt people. And, when I was 20 years old, I had my first anxiety attack and I thought I was dying. I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing. I was sweaty. I thought, what is happening? So in and out of hospitals, doctors' offices for 2 years. And the question always was, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Let's keep doing more tests and find out what's wrong with you. No one ever asked me what happened to you. And of course, I'm 51 years old now. That was 30 years ago. But I think still to this day, that question's not being asked enough. Even people that show up to an ER and aren't feeling well, it's not always just you're sick. There's medically something wrong with you. Because there's such a connection between our physiology and our brain, right? There's just such a connection that people are not taking into account enough. So I don't know. I hope I gave you enough of a history.
You were really clear about that. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
What your comment does hone in on another point we've made on a different episode, that the profession, particularly the medical profession, tends to treat things from the neck down in one way and the neck up in different ways, as if they're not connected.
Yeah. And there's such a connection. Well, you think about, the autonomic nervous system is responsible for every system in the body. And when we're living in a chronic sympathetic nervous system state, the havoc that's wreaking on all the different systems in our body, it's disease, right? But you go to the doctor and the first thing they want to do is put you on medication instead of talking about, what's your lifestyle habits? Are you sleeping? Are you exercising? Are you meditating? Because all of those things are so important. and again, this is no, like, I'm not being negative about any specific space in healthcare, but just that we don't spend enough time empowering the individual to be able to do some of this work on their own.
Right. And we do have a culture that medicalizes trauma.
Yeah.
Not that the symptoms of trauma may not present in the body, but we medicalize it with pills as opposed to how do we work towards repair?
Absolutely. Yes. How do we repair?
How do we repair? So let's talk about how do we repair?
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, what I spend most of my days doing is just, tweaking and coming up with different ways of treating trauma, not coming up with, but bringing in new ways of treating trauma into our facility. One thing I love about Sabino is that we don't contract with insurance companies. So I have a lot of creative freedom around our programming and what we can bring in, because I find some of the more experiential modalities tend to really work for some people rather than just the evidence-based. I'm a big just proponent of it's a balance of everything, right? Even medication is one piece of the puzzle. So if I could put it in a framework of like neuroplasticity, what we're trying to do when people come into treatment is rewire their brain, because they're wired to respond and react to a certain way when they're triggered, right?
Right.
We can't take away the triggers. That's not happening. I tell people all the time, when you leave here, life's still going to happen to you. But we're going to teach you how to react and respond differently to those triggers. And that only happens through stages. So one of them is repair. We have to repair the brain. And a lot of that is nutrition.
Really?
Yes. 90% of our neurotransmitters come from our gut. 90%. And in the last 50 years, the rates of depression and anxiety have risen in direct correlation with the amount of pesticides in our foods. We're not getting our nutrients from our food anymore. So it's a huge part of this process is you've got to repair the gut. And then you have to stimulate the brain in some way. And that's just through all the different modalities of therapy that are provided, right? From EMDR to somatic experiencing to equine therapy. I'm an equine therapist at heart. That's what I started doing. You have to modulate the brain. That's through neurofeedback and medication. Again, medication plays a role, but it's a very small role. You have to relax the brain. That's through any kind of mindfulness or meditation. And then once your brain's modulated and relaxed, it can start differentiating new information from the old and start taking that in. But it becomes about practice, right? You have to practice. It doesn't just happen in a 35, 45 length of stay at a residential treatment. You have to keep doing the work when you leave. But that's how you heal. You learn new skills, you integrate them, and then you practice them every day. So I hope that answered your question.
No, it doesn't answer my question. And it is hopeful news that people do heal. And I also know how long a process healing from trauma takes. And it's a genuine commitment on the part of that individual to do really hard work in a consistent way.
It's so worth it. It's so worth it. When people can see the light on the other side, I heard this quote once, people will take a known pain over an unknown pleasure. That's the way the brain works. We don't like change. But when we can step out of that darkness and into the light and start realizing that we can live a better life, just watching that transformation in people is what gets me up every morning. So.
And people do heal, and people do change. In relationships, I come at this from a family perspective, and so much of trauma occurs within that confines of a family. Seeing families heal is just miraculous. Understanding that we all do, inflict unintended things upon our children, upon each other, and to get to a place of repair and forgiveness. I
love that you brought that up, because part of what we do here as well is we have a family program. And I am also very passionate and invested in family work, because we will play out these subconscious roles in our family system. We don't even realize what you just said. Inadvertently, we're hurting the people we love the most, because we're also bringing in roles that in our family of origin, right? So it's like intergenerational stuff that's coming into play. And when we start to have awareness and expose ourselves to our patterns of behavior, we can start to make changes. But if a person goes to treatment and comes back into the same family system, they have a really hard time sustaining the changes that they've made, because it's easy to go back into old behavior.
Have you ever used this example? If this is a family and Sarah goes off to treatment and does all her work and the other 4 don't do theirs,
I love that.
she comes back into the same hand with the same cartilage, the same sinew, the same pattern.
Yeah. Oh, I might use that. I've used it in different depictions before, but not that one. I love the hand. That's good.
Very simple. It comes with me. It's not a prop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great.
So let's talk a little bit about the newer Chinese medicine sort of techniques that programs are using, and what is the mode and what are you seeing?
Oh, so, well, I mean, here I can speak specifically to what we use. We do acupuncture, we do Reiki, we do biofield tuning, bioenergetic medicine, which are all energy healing modalities. We do craniosacral, which is more Eastern medicine based. I do believe, and I don't do any of those personally, but I partook in all of them because I get to try everything that we do. It's just about moving around energy, right? And it's about awareness of the body. I think for me as a trauma survivor, and I had sexual trauma as a child, a child that experiences sexual trauma becomes very shameful and disconnected to their body, because their body has a reaction and their mind knows it's wrong. And so they stop trusting themselves. As well, we get gut feelings, and children get gut feelings. They know what's happening to them if someone's yelling at them or beating them up or doing what they're doing. They know it's wrong, but they can't blame the primary caregiver, because that's your protection. That's your survival. They have to blame themselves. Again, they learn not to trust their gut instinct. To me, all the body-based, more energy-based treatments are meant to bring awareness to the body, to reconnect the mind and the physiology, right? Mind, body, spirit is to reconnect all of those things. Because I think you can't have one without the other. And, people try to leave one out. Again, medical model, we're just focusing on medication. It doesn't work because we're leaving out those other 2 components.
So in your professional history, from the approach you took when you first started to the approach you take now, what has shifted over the years?
Well, I mean, the biggest shift is just realizing that cognitive behavioral therapy alone does not work. When I first got my master's degree and started getting in this field, that's what we focused on. CBT, DBT, psychoeducation was really important. Make sure people get all the information they need, which again is not, that's still important.
Right.
But it's one part.
One tool.
It's one tool. But the thing is, Diane, as you know, you can't use the tools when you're dysregulated. Right. I use the analogy of a stoplight. When we're green, we're relaxed, embodied, we're in that parasympathetic state. When we move into yellow, that's that fight or flight response. People start to recognize when they're moving into yellow, they can regulate their own nervous system. They can use the tools they're learning, but if they don't have the awareness that they're moving into yellow, they can't even use the tool.
So tying back into the body is one of those awareness systems letting us know. Moving into yellow.
I mean, I know for me, when I'm going into fight or flight, I get a pit in my stomach and this warm wash goes up over me because I've done some work. I have that body awareness. Most people are not even cued into what's happening in their body. So to me, that's the first step, is that awareness.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense to me. So what didn't I ask you today before we close up?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, I think one thing I might want to just drive home a little bit more for folks is, yes, healing is a long process. And it starts, when you first start the process, it's probably pretty intensive when you step into it. But as you go along, I use the analogy, if you go to residential treatment, then you might go to an IOP, and then you might do a couple days a week. And then a year from now, you're just doing 1 day a week. It's not like you're doing that work consistently 5 days a week. You understand where I'm going with this, that the more that you step into a new way of being, the more that those structural changes happen in the brain. So I never want anyone to feel like, oh, it's just too much work. yes, in the beginning when we're making changes, you're gonna have to really focus on it and be intentional. But as time goes on, that becomes your new habit,
Right.
your new norm as you start to heal from the old narratives that you don't need to hold on to anymore. So
Great. We
yeah,
do heal. We are
yeah,
amazing as humans. Yes.
right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shara. I appreciate you taking the time today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff, and I just really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining this webinar. Tune in to more webinars and sign up for our newsletter at o'connorpg.com.